Picture this. You're standing at a car dealership, eyeing that first car you've been saving up for, or maybe you're about to head off to college and tuition bills are on your mind. What do all these situations have in common? Loans. Whether you're a student, starting your first job, or planning a big purchase, loans can play a huge role in making things happen. But how exactly do they work? Today, we'll clear up the confusion surrounding loans, from types of loans to how they can affect your financial future. Stay with me as we walk through the ins and outs, giving you the information you need to make smart, informed decisions. So, what is a loan exactly? Well, a loan is basically when you borrow money from someone or some institution, usually a bank or a lender, and agree to pay it back over time, often with interest. Now, interest, in case you're unfamiliar with that, is the extra money you pay the lender as a fee for borrowing the money. It's kind of like a rental fee, except instead of renting an apartment, you're renting money. But here's something that's often overlooked, and this is where it gets interesting. Not all loans are created equal. There are different types, and each one comes with its own set of rules, benefits, and risks. Some loans are great for short-term needs, others might be better for long-term goals, and it really depends on your situation. We're going to cover the most common types today, and I'll share some examples to help make it all a little clearer. Let's start with something many students are familiar with: student loans. These loans are designed to help pay for education, and what's great is they often come with lower interest rates compared to other loans, which makes them easier to manage. And a lot of times, you don't even have to start paying them back until after you finish school. Sounds pretty good, right? But the thing to remember here is that they still need to be paid back, and over time, the interest can really add up. So, it's important to think about how much you're borrowing and how you plan to pay it back once you graduate. Next, let's talk about personal loans. These are loans that can be used for pretty much anything. Whether you're consolidating debt, paying for a big expense, or maybe even funding a small project, personal loans can offer a lot of flexibility. But with that flexibility comes responsibility. You see, personal loans usually have higher interest rates than things like student loans, so it's important to be careful with how much you borrow and make sure you're able to pay it back on time. Otherwise, that interest can really snowball. Then, we have something called secured loans. A common example of this would be a mortgage, which is a loan used to buy a house. Secured loans are backed by something valuable, like your home or your car, which acts as collateral. The benefit of this is that the lender usually gives you a better interest rate because they know that if you don't pay back the loan, they can take the asset you put up as collateral. However, that also means there's a bit more risk for you, because if you don't make your payments, you could lose that asset. So, secured loans are usually for bigger purchases, and you have to be really sure about your financial situation before taking one on. On the other hand, there are unsecured loans, which don't require any collateral. A credit card is a good example of this type of loan. You're borrowing money, but it's not backed by anything specific. That's why credit cards often have higher interest rates, because the lender is taking on more risk. And here's where things can get tricky. If you only make the minimum payment each month, the interest will keep piling up, and you could end up paying way more than you originally borrowed. That's why it's so important to use credit cards wisely and try to pay off the balance in full whenever possible. Now, you might be wondering, how do you actually get a loan? Well, lenders will usually look at your credit score, which is basically a measure of how responsible you've been with borrowing in the past. If you have a high credit score, it shows that you've paid back loans on time and in full, so lenders are more likely to trust you and offer you better terms, like lower interest rates. On the flip side, if your credit score isn't great, it could make it harder to get a loan, or you might end up with higher interest rates. So, keeping an eye on your credit score and making sure you're managing your debt responsibly is super important. And, speaking of responsibility, it's crucial to have a plan when it comes to paying back any loan. Think about your budget, your income, and your expenses. Can you comfortably make those monthly payments without stretching yourself too thin? If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're struggling to keep up with payments, it's really important to communicate with your lender. Sometimes they can help by adjusting the payment plan, but ignoring the problem will only make things worse in the long run. So, always keep an open line of communication. One thing that I've learned through my own experiences with loans is that they can be incredibly helpful when used wisely. Whether it's helping you go to school, buy a home, or start a business, loans can open doors that might otherwise be closed. But, and this is the key, You need to approach them with a clear understanding of what you're getting into. Know the terms, know the interest rates, and most importantly, know how you're going to pay it back. So, as we wrap up today, remember this: loans are a tool. They're not inherently good or bad. It's all about how you use them. If you're smart about it and take the time to fully understand the terms, they can really work in your favor. But if you rush into a loan without fully thinking it through, it can lead to financial stress. My advice is to always take your time, do your research, and don't be afraid to ask questions along the way. Thanks for sticking with me today. I hope this helped you understand loans a bit better. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer them. Take care, and I'll see you next time.